But what if you lost a limb and you weren't satisfied with just having a normal life? You wanted to have some extraordinary experiences as well. That's what our next guests do. They help people achieve these extraordinary experiences. They put their time, energy, and engineering know-how into doing just that. They're SolidWorks users. Discovery Channel has taken an interest, and actually they have a pilot. Let's take a look.
My name is Pieretti. I work with the best engineer I know, my good friend Bill.
Fire!
Oh! We design and build high-tech prosthetics.
We have to put this where his arm used to be.
Like you've never seen before. This one's out of the park.
This is awesome.
Bill's the mad scientist inventor.
What are we going to do to keep your leg from burning off? I'll have a fire extinguisher ready.
Thank you. And I'm the perfect guinea pig. Because I'm a one-legged stuntman.
Oh, you were way up high.
Let's get in the water. But we don't build machines that make people like me as good as new. He's going to crush the competition. We make them better than new. Better than you.
Please welcome Bill Spracher and Pieretti. Bill, good to see you. Thanks. Hey, Casey. Welcome to SolidWorks World.
Thank you, thank you.
So you can tell these guys have a different way of looking at things. Casey has such a unique perspective. Will you share it with us?
No, I'd love to. So if I take off my prosthesis and you ask me to walk across the stage, I couldn't. And it's very accurate to say that I'm disabled at that point. I put the leg back on, and as you can see, I can move as well as the next guy. And I'm completely able, but different. And the goal with what we do is I don't want to be just abled, I want to be super enabled.
We look at the space where Casey's leg was as an opportunity to enhance his life.
And it's a terrific way of looking at things. So we've seen a little bit of what you do. Tell us about the process and how you got into this.
Well, our process is I'll have a need, or another amputee will come to me with something that they want to do. And I take that in, and I think about what is the most outrageous thing we can do to make that possible for that person. And then I take that to Bill.
Casey's ideas are kind of crazy sometimes, and I have to kind of filter that a little bit. I always start with the constraints, you know. How much time do we have? What's it going to cost? Is it real? Is it possible? And we kind of, you know, kick some ideas around. Sometimes it's going at one tangent. Sometimes it comes back to the center. We have a real good idea. I always try and look at those elements from a realistic standpoint. Casey's got a really amazing mind, and sometimes he's not based in reality, but we bring that home. But you know, nothing's impossible. It's always, you know, it's always going to be, you know, something incredible. We spitball ideas, we kick stuff back and forth, and we focus on the strongest and the weakest points. And somewhere, we have a product.
Right, and we keep it fun when we put these ideas together.
Right, right, and that's the important thing. We've seen quite a bit of projects, but why don't you walk us through one of your first ones? I think it was had to do with your love of skin diving.
Right, I'm an avid free diver, and when I first started diving after I lost my leg, I would only use one fin just to have the freedom. And I got to be a pretty good diver, and I was able to hold my breath for an extraordinarily long time, and I was going deeper and deeper and finding that I was getting into trouble kicking back up. So I went to Bill for our very first project, and I said, how can we attach a fin to my leg that would give me enough power to kick up from a dive that is upwards of 100 feet?
In my company, we do urethane, polyurethane, and we were already making a force fin, and we do a lot of prototypes. And so, you know, Casey's got this socket with a fitting, a standard pyramid fitting that his prosthesis is attached to, and it's pretty solid. So the simplest thing was to take that as a starting point, and then just attach a fin to it, and let him swim away and see how it worked. But in doing so, we found there were a few issues we had to deal with, and that is, how does he get in and out of the water? And the simplest was to put a peg leg on him and let him hobble down, you know, hold the fin out of the way, simple hinge unit, you know, it locks down, great, you know, unhinge it. and he's able to have access. There was another problem that we encountered, though, and that's the socket problem.
Right, and what we found was that I was really able to get just the same amount of force out of this as I was out of my other leg. But when I was kicking, I would start to get water filtering into my prosthetic socket. And so we needed to figure out a way to make sure that that didn't happen. And also, a big fear of mine was to actually be on a dive in open water and have the leg come off and I'd lose it.
Right.
So we came up with a retainer on a wetsuit that actually would lock around the bottom of the right there. It locks around the bottom of my socket. I put the wetsuit on, and the only way to get the leg off is to tear the wetsuit.
Right. So it's interesting. What's interesting on this project is each challenge presented a new obstacle, and with innovation, you just kept building and building until you had a great product. But we saw from the clip that there was a motorized version, and I think that's really an interesting story. How did that come about?
Well, one of my favorite projects. I mean, this was, you know, my vision when I first thought about building a diving leg. But an ex-Navy diver came to us, and he kind of wanted to get back in the water with his friends, who were all Navy divers. And he lost his leg in a motorcycle wreck in 1997. And so I went to Bill, and I'm like, I'd really like to take him to somewhere that we haven't gone before. And so I said, can we make this motorized propeller leg that we had been talking about?
So the idea here was, you know, use what's available. We took a standard electric trolling motor, boat trolling motor, and we had an old sea scooter, sww scooter, and married the components together, the propeller and the shroud from the sea scooter, the electric motor, and then put a pyramid fitting on the top of it, so Casey just puts this on his leg, you know, and it's a pretty nice little motor unit.
Right.
The problem we encountered after that was, how do you power this thing? So we played with a bunch of different ideas. We put a battery pack on and motorcycle batteries in the back. And then we didn't like that, because if you want to scuba dive, you can't, you know, have a tank and a battery pack on your back. So we designed a weight belt that was canisters of batteries, watertight, all connected together, and a little quick disconnect switch here, so that if anything goes wrong, anything gets wrapped in the propeller, you can instantly just stop it, because, you know, it could be a problem. And that started to make it work. All these things were done, you know, SolidWorks, 3D printer, made a model, cast a part off that model, did a little machining to make a, you know, watertight O-ring seal, and it worked. I mean, it's such a simple process, and it integrates really well.
And we have a clip of the results we'll show.
I hit the switch, and this thing starts to push me, and I'm going faster and faster. I'm thinking to myself, this is incredible.
We were all worried for nothing.
I'm a trained Navy diver with 2 intact legs, and I couldn't even keep up with him.
It was our design and our engineering, but it was Greg who brought this to life.
Right. And that was your friend using the prototype, is that right?
Right, yeah, he's a friend of mine now. I actually met him after he lost his leg and kind of talked to him about what is possible in his life.
Right, that's terrific. And then, as you can see, the passion went out of the water to another pastime of Casey's, which is rock climbing. And you had some challenges there as well.
Right, well, I began rock climbing after I lost my leg. And I simply just went out and bought a pair of rock climbing shoes and wore them on my prosthetic foot. And I quickly found that the leverage and just the way that the prosthetic foot worked was going to limit how well I was going to be able to climb.
Right.
So I went to Bill once again, and I'm like, hey, Bill, how can we make an extreme rock climbing foot
Yeah.
that
I
I could use?
never did rock climbing, and so I talked to Casey about it and tried to understand what was needed. So we started by going to the best climbing shoes available and, you know, kind of reverse engineering, looking at what works in these shoes. And they have very specific front edge shapes, and they also have very interesting material. It's a rubber that's really soft and grippy, but still pretty tough.